by Viagra. Talk to your doctor.
Back to the Bell Center and Elliot Friedman. Elliot?
Well, Ron, Peter Puck mentioned there about Jerry Cheevers getting a lot of credit for putting the stitches on the mask, but it's one of Cheevers' best friends, a longtime buddy of his, Doug Favell, who deserves the credit for bringing a certain kind of artistry to the game 38 years ago tonight.
How did the idea of painting the mask all begin?
It started on 1971, October and Halloween. Just the morning skate, just the kibitzing amongst the guys. I said to the trainer, Frank Lewis, I said, Frank, maybe we should, you know, tonight's the orange uniforms. Let's paint the mask orange like the Great Pumpkin. And Frank said, yeah, I can do that this afternoon. And he took the mask home, painted it orange, and wore it that night against L.A., and we won 4-1. And as superstitious as goalies are, I decided, okay, I better keep this mask. It's a winner. Jerry Cheevers was my buddy, and of course Cheesy takes credit for having the first design mask because he put the stitches on it. Mm-hmm. But I've seen the mask with all the stitches on it, and believe me, he never got hit that much.
So the legend isn't true?
Yeah, he wouldn't have that many hits on his body.
The original mask is in storage at the Hockey Hall of Fame, although even if you saw it, you wouldn't recognize it.
So we'll call this the Doug Favell Wall of Fame, some of the keepsakes from your career. There's the mask you had in Colorado. We'll get to this one, the Philly one, in a second. That's your backup mask from when you played in Toronto. But the unfortunate thing about this story is the mask, the original as you painted in 1971, it doesn't look like that anymore.
No, it's actually now got the leaf from my original when I got traded. In '73, Elliot, it went through the form of being the starburst to the leaf, and then they took that one because it was the original mask.
You changed the design from the orange after that 1 year. Why was that?
Well, in 1972, we went down to the last game of the season with the orange mask, which had done so well all year. But we had played Buffalo in the last game of the season, and I got scored on with 4 seconds to go in the season. That put us out of the playoffs. Jerry Meehan scored on me, and so being superstitious once again as a goaltender, I said that mask can't come back next year.
Things are very different since Favell's orange burst of creativity 38 years ago. This is now big business. David Arrigo does it for a living. And check out this beautiful mask he's working on. Carey Price has commissioned it for Remembrance Day.
Carey wanted to keep this mask clean here, creating a lot of the iconic figures such as the poppies, the Canadian flag, the bagpiper, and of course the soldier pinning the ribbon onto the reef. One of the most important parts of this piece here is, of course, the poem In Flanders Field. And of course, lest we forget, going across the bottom, and then the French equivalent of it on the other side here.
All right, so Carey says, David, I want this mask. What's the process of putting it together?
Carey will present different ideas and thoughts, what he wants to see on the mask. And then it's up to me to take those thoughts and put them down onto paper like we have here. This is just a very general and rough layout, and doesn't even include the bagpiper or the soldier at this point here. That is an afterthought. Then Carey will take a look at these images, which I had emailed him. Yep. He sees them and he says, you know what, let's add in like something else. So that's where we came up with the ideas of the bagpiper as well as the soldier pinning the poppy on the reef.
How long does it take you to do one of these?
It can vary from anywhere between 2 days to 3 days. I'd like to spend maybe about a week or 2 on each mask, but reality is with the NHL, they want their stuff done and they want it done right away. So 2 to 3 days is usually a safe bet. And then there's clear coating that will take approximately probably about 6 to 7 days after that. So entirely probably about 9 days.
And in a year, how many of these masks will you do?
At this point here, I'm completing anywhere between 80 to 100 masks.
The most expensive one can cost a few $1,000s, a long way from the simple coat of paint applied to Doug Favell's mask in 1971. And just one note about that mask that's being commissioned for Carey Price, Ron. Although he's going to wear it when he plays this year, he's not going to keep it. He's going to auction it off after he's done with it. And you can go to a website called woundedwarriors.ca to find out more about it. Price is going to donate the proceeds to soldiers who've been injured in combat during the war in Afghanistan.
Elliot Friedman at the Bell Center, where Toronto plays Montreal shortly. Let's go to the iDesk right now. Jeff Merrick and Scott Morrison. Jeff.
Yeah.
November 1st, 2009, a day marked in NHL history. The 50th anniversary of the night that Jacques Plante first slipped on a mask in an NHL game, forever changing the game itself. Welcome to 50 Years Behind the Mask. I'm Dan Pollard. Over the next hour, we'll take a look at the history of the mask and talk to one of the game's greatest historians. As well, we'll move to present day and find out how a mask is designed and created. We'll also talk about the improved mask safety and take a look back at some of the great masks over the years, culminating with our top 10. Before we do that, let's begin where it all started. The thought of a goaltender not wearing a mask is to think of someone committing hockey suicide. But less than 50 years ago, not one goaltender did. Injuries were commonplace, and the faces of most netminders were scarred for life. That all changed on a fateful night at Madison Square Garden. The Canadian Jacques Plante was injured on a shot by the Rangers' Andy Bathgate. It was a watershed moment in NHL history. The legendary journalist Red Fisher was there.
It opened a cut from the corner of his mouth all the way up through his nostril. Now try and imagine that, the pain that he was going through. And I rushed down to the dressing room. This was in Madison Square Garden. And there was Plante looking into the mirror and separating, the cut, looking at it. And he said, "Pretty ugly," he said to me. I said, "Yeah, well, you had a good start, Jacques." He lay down on the table, was stitched by the doctor, skated back to the room, put on his mask, came out, and when he came out with the mask, you could feel and hear the buzz of the crowd. It was an incredible night.
Plante had been wearing a mask during practices for months, but his head coach, Toe Blake, was dead set against it. On this occasion, however, Blake had no choice. No other goaltender was available, so he relented. Plante played well and won that night.
Before the next game, Toe Blake said to me, he's not going to wear the mask. And Plante said to me, if I don't wear the mask, I'm not playing. And that was Jacques Plante.
Any concerns of the mask negatively affecting Plante were dispelled when he would go on an unbeaten streak of 18 games. Just like that, the mask was here to stay. Jacques Plante was a genius that dared to be different. He changed the role of a goaltender in so many ways. He was the first to stop the puck behind the net, he was the first to handle it, and headman the puck to teammates. But of all his enduring contributions to a sport he passionately cared about, we cite the goalie mask as the one we remember him best for. Goaltenders are the last line of defense, playing the most important position in all of sports. With pucks whizzing by their head and forwards crashing the net, they also play one of the most dangerous positions in all of sports. Jacques Plante realized that, and he stood by his beliefs and slipped on his mask. Goaltenders, since that time, have him to thank. For more on the history of the mask, we talked to one of the leading hockey historians.
I know we've already seen Jacques Plante's original mask, the pioneering mask, which was really quite a solid and obscured most of his face. But after only a handful of games, he switched to this mask, which many call the pretzel style, and that was his signature mask. for many years, and he went on to great success with it. And clearly it offered him better protection, better vision, and better ventilation, and therefore dealt with the three concerns about masks when they were first introduced. The other interesting mask in this case, I think, is this one by Gilles Meloche from 77-78. You can see in comparison to the Plante mask, it does afford quite a bit greater protection. It goes a lot higher on the forehead and protects the temples. It's solid. It sits a little bit away from the goalie's face, again allowing for ventilation. But really it's the decoration that's so interesting. The full heraldry and the careful, real kind of professional look to it by the artist Greg Harrison made it one of the significant masks of the late 70s. Gary Simmons of the California Seals wore this mask in the mid-70s, and it's significant not only just because it looks cool. Simmons' nickname was the Cobra, I think because of his quickness and all of that, and that's represented on the mask. And here we have a fully decorated mask that has nothing to do with the team. It's not even in the team colors, it doesn't have the team logo on it, but it's just a vivid mask, and it was very much was his signature. And it's interesting to compare it to this Grant Fuhr mask from 20 years later. Look at the difference between the two. We can see the goalie's face. We're into the cage era. It's a much more protective. It stands away from the goalie, so it's got to be cooler. And there's been a tremendous evolution. And here, combined with the improved shoulder and chest protection that goalies were wearing by this point, now goalies could square up to the shooter, and if the puck nicked them on the mask, well, that wasn't that big a deal. Ken Dryden wore this mask initially at Cornell University, where he became an NCAA All-Star. And indeed, he refers to it as his Cornell mask because he was one of those guys in the transition. He played his whole career up to that point without a mask, but NCAA rules required that goalies wore masks, period. So he put this one on, and he used it when he came to the NHL and had that surprise coming from nowhere cup win in '71. He used this with Team Canada against Russia in the Super Series in '72, and had a great deal of success with it. And it is only after he took that year off, a sabbatical year, there's a bit of a contract dispute, and he went back to law school, that he had the red, white, and blue bullseye mask made that so many people remember him in. But this is the mask with which he began his career. Chico Resch wore this interesting mask from '74 to 1976 with the Islanders, and it's significant for a couple of reasons. It's one of the very first masks that was fully decorated in a team's colors with a team's logo, and when you look at it closely, you can see that the surface of the mask is uneven and that it's been painted by hand, and it really has the feeling of being a piece of folk art. But within a couple of years, masks had another significant change. They still were a solid fiberglass piece. We were a big step away from the cutout and the metal cage that we know today. But these larger fiberglass masks had a prominent chin piece. It was almost like a cowcatcher shape. And these afforded mask decorators a larger canvas on which to work. And perhaps the best known example of that is the mask that Gilles Gratton wore for the New York Rangers in '76-77, and it's the one that's painted into the fearsome face of a snarling cat. Now, everyone thought that it was a lion's face. Gratton was a character and notoriously superstitious, and astrologically he was a Leo, but he was quick to say that in fact it was a tiger's image, that he got the idea from looking at National Geographic. And he was eccentric of the highest order. He claimed he was a reincarnated soldier from the Spanish Inquisition. He believed his goaltending was influenced by the phases of the moon. And he was known to hiss like a cat and growl at opposing players when they came in on goal. And his mask reflected that. And in any collection, I haven't seen your final results of the 10 greatest masks, but I'm sure it's right near the top of the list.
Plante paved the way for future netminders, but he wasn't the first goaltender to wear face protection in an NHL game. That distinction goes to Montreal Maroons netminder Clint Benedict, who donned a leather mask for a brief period in 1930. He didn't wear it long, though, as it hampered his vision.
My name
Nicknamed the China Wall, Johnny Bower was fearless. An opposing forward crashing the crease, no problem. Bobby Hall slapshot, bring it on. In fact, Johnny Bower was best known for a poke check when he dove head first in an opposing forward as he came into the zone. Who better to catch up with Johnny than Kevin Weeks of the NHL Network, another member of the Goaltenders Union.
Hello everybody, we're here at the beautiful Hockey Hall of Fame with legendary goaltender Johnny Bower. Johnny, just want to talk a little bit, welcome you first of all. Thanks so much for joining us, we really appreciate it. But being a fellow goalie growing up here in Toronto, I had the chance to watch a lot of highlights of you, and of course I played in a different era, this now being my first year retired, but your career was quite spectacular. Maybe you can take us through a little bit about what it meant when you first came in with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we'll get to a couple more things a little bit down the road.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. Nice meeting you. And you're a great goaltender yourself, too.
Thank you.
You know.
Thank you.
And yeah, I never gave one thing. I always wanted to have my name engraved on the Stanley Cup, and I thought at one time, being in Cleveland, and then of course I'd never get a break, but because there's so many great goaltenders, particularly at that time, it was hard to break in. They only had 6 goaltenders. But anyway, in 58, 59, when I got to Toronto, I was one of the greatest thrills of my life, because I thought, oh, I finally made it. And then, of course, then we found out we had Mr. Imlach as a coach, and apparently he coached Providence at one time, and I got to know Punch fairly well, and I know he's very, very strict and demanding in your work, and he used to tell me too, and that you work hard, he says, you'll stay with this club, and he said, if you don't, you're going to go back where you came from. So. But they only wanted me here, Kevin, for only 1 year, right? But I fooled him and was here about 12 more years.
One of the main things now that everybody talks about is equipment, and the difference in the equipment from our era now compared to your era when you were playing. Could you talk a little bit about what it was like playing, first of all, with no mask, and then with the quality of the equipment at that time? What was the reality of that like for you?
Well, you know, when you mentioned no mask, I learned how to duck, believe me. But anyway, I had problems seeing with the mask. Actually, I only wore a mask for about 17 games, and I used to tell Punch, I said, I can't see too well with that mask. He says, you can't see anyway, so what makes a difference anyway, you know? So I said, no, really, but it certainly gives you a lot of protection, no doubt about that, but something you have to get used to, and I couldn't get used to it at all. And it was the one I had was the one that was a molded mask at that time, but the ones that they have now, like the one you have in your hand here, it's a beautiful mask.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I call it the wire mask, and it's great. I put it on when you got here, Kevin, as you know, and I could see really good. Hey, I might make a comeback here with that.
What was the feeling like having to face guys in practice every day, your own teammates, and then face guys in game situations without a mask? And you said you actually preferred that, but what was that like?
It was scary. I was always afraid of losing an eye, and I come very, very close to losing my eye at times, particularly on and deflections. And of course, when you're practicing, you know, you don't quite bear down like you do in the game, and you should, because that puck's coming at you pretty fast, you know, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour on you. So, and then that's when Punch said, you better start wearing a mask in practice. I said, Punch, I'm not going to look good in practice, and I'm afraid, I says, you're going to get another goaltender in there. Like, take Sachak, I had to fight him. And I said, I'm going to be sitting the bench, and I don't like sitting the bench. He says, you just play your game, and he says, I'm going to try and split you guys, which he did. He played half, and I played half of the season. But it's something that gives you a lot of protection. I mean, you're not afraid to dive for a puck or anything like that when you got a mask like that. You know, you're not going to get cut or anything. So, but still, I just couldn't get used to it.
Well, one thing I noticed is that you were a very active goalie, and again, in seeing clips of you, you were acrobatic. How did you come up with the poke check, and when did you use it in game situations?
Okay, and when I was in 1952-53, I was drafted by the New York Rangers, and Charlie Rayner was they called him Prince Charlie there in New York. He retired, and he was watching me. He came from Saskatoon, and I came from Prince Albert, not too far, so he knew me pretty well. And he was watching me practice one day. He says, you know, you don't handle that puck that well. He says, you got to learn how to do the poke check. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Right.
And after practice, he came on the ice and he lined up the pucks over here, there, about 5 pucks, and I used to go out and poke check, get up for 10 minutes after a practice. It was all timing, more or less, on a poke check. You had to wait till the guy came close enough to you and then give it. But if you did miss a puck accidentally, get your stick in front of his skates and you go flying into the corner.
Right.
That was accidentally. You
Yes,
didn't do that on
yes.
purpose.
Johnny, did you ever feel a pressure to go to the mask after some of your peers started wearing them? Did you ever feel that sense that, hey, I got to wear one of these?
No, not really. I just felt, well, I know things are changing, equipment is changing and everything else, and it's time now, the way the players are shooting the puck, you better put something on your face because you got one head and you want to keep it. And and I was a little, I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared. Sure, I was scared, but I never thought about it. I just had one job to do, and that was to try to stop the puck as long as you could.
Yes.
I noticed your face, like you haven't got any scars like I have.
Yeah,
huh?
but
Yeah.
well,
that's
thanks.
wrinkles. That's all right. Yeah. You ever get hit in the face with a puck?
Yeah, funny enough, you should ask. When I was playing in the IHL, in the International Hockey League with Detroit, I got a shot on the right side here, and it was a wrist shot off a face-off, and the cage exploded.
Wow.
And it cut me. I ended up getting cut right here, right above my eyebrow. You're laughing because this is the only one I've got. This is the only one I have.
One stitch or two stitches?
It was 2 stitches. I got to admit, it was 2 stitches. But this is the only one that I got right here. But I can't imagine. When it happened, I just freaked out. I panicked.
Right.
You know, anytime something with your eye, it's your worst fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up skating. It was in our home end, and I skated right through the Zamboni doors. I was bleeding, and I got into the locker room, and the trainer calmed me down. And after about 5 minutes, my vision started coming back. So I dodged a bullet there, literally. But yeah, I really freaked out. I can't imagine you guys doing it. You're probably calling me a pansy now.
No. It's pretty scary.
But
It's a dangerous job being a goaltender.
This is true, but I can't imagine you guys having that every day, the reality of that every day. So credit to you. And on behalf of all of us here at the Hockey Hall of Fame, on behalf of our team here at the NHL Network, we want to thank you for taking the time out. It's special to get a chance to connect with you and get some of your stories. You truly are a legend and an inspiration. Thanks again,
Thank
Johnny.
you, Kevin.
Thank
It's great
you.
to be here. And
Thank
also
you.
at the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
He had one of the most iconic poses ever in the NHL, as well as having one of the most memorable masks. We'll go one-on-one with the legendary Ken Dryden when we come back. Known for his famous pose, Ken Dryden is also known to have worn one of the most famous masks in NHL history. And the Hall of Famer Ken Dryden joins us now. Ken, you started out your career wearing the so-called metal pretzel mask coming out of college, and then from 1975 to 1979, you started wearing the target mask. Who came up with the bullseye scheme?
Well, that was me. The idea wasn't to be a target mask. It was supposed to be the sort of concentric C's of the Montreal Canadiens. And so it was really the red and the white and the blue C's coming together. The cutouts on the mask kind of made people assume that in fact under what would have been the cutout would have been nothing or would have been color and therefore the target. But really they were intended to be just C's, three different colors of a C.
Dan Bouchard of the Atlanta Flames felt that when he wore his painted masks that players tended to shoot higher. Did you ever get a feeling that players were shooting higher because of the bullseye?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think in fact in most ways during the time that I was playing is that shooters did not shoot high. There was still the kind of conventional message from coaches of a pre-mask time that said in practice, you know, don't shoot high. You know, you can't shoot high. You're putting our goalie at risk. And because the early masks were not very protective, it meant that in practice, coaches would be yelling at shooters that if they shot high, and goalies would as well. And that what I found is really that during the time that I played, you almost never had a top corner shot. That the shooters were so used to shooting lower because of the yelling that they were hearing, that they were basically operating on a net that was only about 3 feet high.
Ken, you grew up playing without a mask. NCAA rules force you to wear one. Did you find it difficult or lose the puck in your feet as a taller goaltender once you started wearing that mask?
No. Once you had to make the transition, then it was easy. If you didn't have to make the transition, and during the time that I was playing junior B hockey, masks were certainly starting to be used by other goalies. But goalies were so used to seeing the problem with a mask, and so you'd have it on your face, and you'd say, well, I can see a little bit here, it gets in my way, or if I try to look down at my feet, I can't quite see the puck. I mean, all you need to do is turn your head down and you can see it. But so long as you didn't have to wear it, then you'd be looking for reasons not to wear it. As soon as I was in a position where I had to wear one at Cornell and in the NCAA, then all of a sudden those things don't even exist, and it's not a problem at all.
So what's your favorite all-time mask?
Well, I mean, as you said, I only made, I only wore 2. And they were both fine for their time. I mean, the reason that I changed from the pretzel mask to the other one was that the pretzel mask was really falling apart. I mean, it was smaller, and so it only really covered to the point of your chin and nothing to your temples or further back. But also it had cracked, and so literally I had wound tape around where the mask had cracked through in the thinner parts right near the eyes. And so I wanted something that was more protective. That's why I made the change. And each was really for their own time. I mean, I liked wearing each of them. I think probably the fans preferred the pretzel mask to the mask that came later, because it was a little bit more unusual and very much based on the original Jacques Plante mask.
Including masks of other goaltenders, what's your all-time favorite?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think the Jerry Cheevers mask was fun. I mean, it was just the right idea at the time of, here masks are new, and both as a reminder to yourself as a goalie and to others, the effect of a mask of as he did of drawing on what the stitches would likely have been from the stick or from the puck. I think that was the most interesting and clever, of all of the masks.
I've always found it ironic that despite putting on a mask, goaltenders back then were still recognizable by the masks they wore or the way they painted them.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the masks of that time were really primitive. I mean, they often they were, they were made even by the goalies themselves. That was a part of it, but they rested right against the face. I mean, I know it with my masks, and I think for most goalies, they literally rested against the face. There was no even space for foam padding between the fiberglass and the skin. And so what the masks would do is that they would distribute some of the force a little bit. They would protect you from the worst blows. But I mean, if you got a shot off the mask, it hurt, and it shook you up, pretty considerably.
Ken, thanks for joining us.
Okay, you're welcome, Dan.
Ever wonder what's involved in the process of designing a goalie mask? We'll show you firsthand when we return. Jacques Plante was the innovator, but other goaltenders took it a step further. Gerry Cheevers was the first to add markings to his mask, and Doug Favell was the first to add color. Masks continue to be made. We caught up with a designer and creator.
My name is David Arrigo. I've been painting masks for just over 3 years now. Today I'll be taking you through the entire process of the creation of the mask, as well as we'll be creating a mask for the NHL Network and their newest addition, Kevin Weekes. I'll be talking to my goalies and sketching it and taking their ideas, their visions, and creating masks from that point there. This is the finished sketch, a general idea and a very rough sketch. Normally I would email this to Kevin so he could get an idea, but right now we're under a little bit of a time restraint. So come with me next door and we'll start the fun process, which is the actual painting. Another one of the steps in the process of creating the mask is the actual lettering and decals. What I'm going to be doing here right now is just cutting out some of the letters. We're going to be putting Shady 80 down the side of the chin of the NHL Network mask, and just going to be doing something a little more stylized, you know, English Gothic and that sort of thing. And this helps to protect the color that I'm going to base paint. And it doesn't make sense right now, but it eventually will, that this area will be all black, and I will be actually painting mirror onto the helmet, which will give it a very, very cool effect. I actually failed grade 9 art, not taking it again. Went off to college where I took graphic design management. I had a friend of mine that was wearing one of my jean jackets, and just sort of created a domino effect where somebody from one of the breweries had seen the jacket and asked if I could do murals, and I was sure. At the time it was a massive mural for me since it was 3 feet by 3 feet, you know, whereas now I'm doing like 100 by 120 or whatever it may be, and it just grew from there. My big break came when Wayne Gretzky's restaurant approached me about doing the outdoor wall, and then led into the Hockey Hall of Fame, asked me to do Wayne's induction, did a piece there. The NHL had seen that piece and brought me on for my first All-Star game, which was in 2000, and thankfully it was here at home in Toronto. Okay, I just finished up Kevin's face, and what I've done now, I've taped this over to protect it from any overspray. I did a coating of black because that's what I want as the base for when we do the Shady 80 license plate along here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be taking the letters that I cut out a little earlier, and I'm going to be applying them, hopefully straight, but this is something that we could sort of wing. And basically here we go. Right now I'm just cleaning up some of the edges. So I'm going to be getting up right now to do the other side, the NHL logo. As long as the logo is still well represented, which it will be, but yet still visually pleasing to the eye. A lot of the goaltenders, it shows what they were feeling at that moment when they were describing what they were looking for. Clemenson is a great example of that. He likes more of a stylized work, which speaks much of what his personality is. I can't imagine how other artists have felt when they've seen their masks basically hoisted beside that cup. And I really, really hope that will happen soon. I look forward to it. And you know what? Even if it doesn't, so be it. I've gotten to this level of pure euphoria, just watching my masks on TV and being around friends and family and enjoying the experience. It's like I did that.
We'll hear from today's masked men when we return and learn more about their masks. Stay tuned.
times have changed for the goalie mask, and you know, it's pretty crazy to think about what they were wearing in their time. And I tell you what, I probably wouldn't have signed up to be a goaltender if I had to play without a helmet.
There's one video with Johnny Bauer. He's always been a favorite of mine anyways. But there's this one shift, he gets hit like by the puck once and by sticks twice right in the middle, and he just keeps going, and I just can't imagine.
The game's a little bit different now than it was back then, but you got to give those guys credit for playing the game without wearing a helmet. It's protected my face on a number of occasions to keep this pretty figure, but it'd definitely be a pretty nerve-wracking position. You know, there's a lot of stress involved, and then to have to worry about going down and potentially having a puck taken in the face. These helmets definitely do their job in protecting us.
I loved, you know, I lived in Red Deer, so I was right between, you know, Calgary and Edmonton. And Andy Moog was my favorite goalie growing up, so I'd always draw, you know, his masks when any team that he played for. So I'd have to say, you know, his was pretty cool. I like Kirk McLean's. It was pretty basic, but it looked really awesome.
One of my favorites is probably Murray Bannerman's back in the 80s. You know, it was still in the 80s. Guys were changing over to the full helmet and cage, and you know, he was still wearing the fiberglass right onto his face, and just a great Hawks design on there too. So it was great growing up and seeing that.
When I was younger, one of my first custom paint jobs was Marty Turco's helmet. He had a gargoyle on the top of it. You know, it's a kind of a keeper. So that was, you know, had a brick wall on the side, and then my nickname on the chin. And then from that point on, I've always had my nickname on the chin.
Grew up a Ranger fan. I liked Mike Richter's. He had the he had Statue of Liberty there, and he had a few different designs. But you know, I mean, everyone has their own style. Everyone picks something differently for their own reasons, and you know, it's pretty cool to play against different teams, see different helmets.
You know, I put a little bow hunter on here because I was heavy into bow hunting when I was younger, and I hope to be again someday, you know, when hockey's over. And then I got my kids' initials, Kit Kat Cot. And then the Beware Bear sign became quite popular a couple years ago.
You know, you want to keep the team theme in there. Obviously, I got the Hurricanes logo. You know, one of the ideas is I came up with the Blackbeard Pirate, just being in the coast here in North Carolina, and it's something that has been able to stick with me. It's kind of been a theme that I've kept on all my masks, and really the back play is where it gets personal. I have the cross to express my Christianity, and then I have my grandfather's name in there, who passed away during the lockout year, who I was really close with. You got the Stanley Cup, you got CWC. Is for my wife, and Finest Hour actually is a local band that of my buddies in Sherwood Park.
I got nothing too special about my helmet. It's a medieval warrior's helmet with my name on the front there, and I got the Kings logo on the back. It's our third jersey logo. Last year I had our regular game jersey logo. I just mixed it up a little bit with that one, and pretty much the same exact helmet from last year.
You know, right now I kind of stuck with the team theme. So obviously we got the Blue Jackets logo here. We got two Civil War soldiers. You know, with the Blue Jackets being, you know, a battalion in the Civil War era, and then we got some more soldiers on here. Obviously our shoulder patch, and then here we got a guy tending to his friend who's, you know, kind of bleeding. It's kind of a little gory, but on the chin I've always had my nickname. And then on the back I have just a tribute to my grandfather who passed away this summer. He flew in a Lancaster in the Second World War, and then obviously the poppy representing, you know, remembering all the soldiers that were, you know, killed and fought in the war.
You know, my main concern was just to have the Corvette on there. It's America's sports car, American-born kid, so it's kind of my passion. So I wanted to have that on there. Got the C6 Racing logo on there, and that's pretty much free reign. Otherwise, he came up with the snowman on it and whatnot.
Shape, size, and mask design have all changed significantly. We'll take a look at how much mask safety has improved when we return.
How to have fewer hangovers. Method 1, don't drink. Hangover avoided. Method 2, take chaser while you drink and wake up feeling great. Breakfast in bed not included. Let's review. Method 1, don't drink. Method 2, take chaser while you drink. Wake up feeling great and cute as a button. Individual cuteness may vary. If you get hangovers, try chaser. Just take 2 pills with your first drink and 2 more later. The choice is yours. Don't drink or don't drink without chaser. Please drink responsibly.
Can you say freetriplescore.com 3 times fast?
Freetriplescore.com, 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 freetriplescore.com.
What's freetriplescore.com?
Freetriplescore.com, freetriplescore.com. Why is freetriplescore.com the best place to go get my credit score?
Freetriplescore.com gives you all 3 credit reports and scores from the 3 top bureaus. And best of all, they're free when you try Privacy Matters 1, 2, 3.
Really get all 3 for free?
Why do I need to check all 3 of my credit reports and scores?
One credit report doesn't tell you the whole story.
You could have good credit on one report, and on the other 2, you could have harmful information that could keep you from getting a loan, and in some cases, keep you from getting a job.
Not knowing your credit score could be a big mistake.
I didn't know my credit score could keep me from getting a job.
Lenders look at all 3 credit reports, shouldn't I?
3 really is better than 1.
Where can I get all 3?
Where can I get all 3?
Where can I get all 3? Log on to freetriplescore.com where you can get 3 for free.
Freetriplescore.com.
Artukin. That's off the helmet. He did it again.
This was planned. He keeps his hands down and everything down. He says, I'll just use the head.
He always does that. Younger's got a lot of room to shoot, and he got himself a goaltender.
Boy, did he ever.
Roussel is down, but hopefully only momentarily stunned.
The masks are so terrific, Tom, that they make now. That was a little whack. Yeah.
Hennigan. O'Neill's pass on the tape of Paulini. Shoots one off the mask of Marty Brodeur.
Martin Brodeur made the save off the mask.
2-on-1. Maple Leafs. Clark and Anderson. Clark. He hit Joseph in the mask. It came off. The puck was stopped, but the goalie is shaken up.
After a solid career in parts of 9 NHL seasons, Kay Whitmore decided to hang up the pads. Not wanting to stray too far from the crease, he became manager of hockey operations in the NHL. Working with Chris King, they are heavily involved in the regulation of goaltending equipment. And obviously he has an inside look at the improvement in safety as well, including the mask. Eddie Schultz was a man who designed a mask for Kay Whitmore. Recently the two got together to talk about the improvements in masks over the years.
I'm here with Eddie Schultz of Eddie Masks. I think it's only fitting, Eddie, on the 50th anniversary of Jacques Plante's mask, to talk to somebody that's been in the industry a heck of a long time, long enough to even make one of mine in the old days. So can you let us know where were we and where we've gone, and over the course of history, how the mask been improved?
Well, certainly if you look back here, you can see the sort of a snapshot of the evolution of masks. We have an early mask that Sadchak wore, and you can see that there's not much to it, no padding, of course. And
what year would that have been?
Oh, that would have been in the 60s, I would imagine, and it was just molded straight to the player's face, and really wasn't widely accepted till later on. Of course, Jacques Plante was the first one to don a mask, and a lot of goalies took note and started wearing them for extra protection. We have a mask here that sort of started to replace the smaller full-face masks, and it represents a longer chin, a little bit further back with ear coverage, and also a little more substantial materials. One of the problems with this type of mask is that as the game got faster and harder, the players started feeling the shots in the cheekbones. They were getting cut and even getting their bones broken in their face. And so what happened was it transferred over to this type of helmet, which allowed a cage in front of their face. The problem is that the flat front of this helmet would cause a problem because it was flat, and the impact would go right through the helmet into the player's face.
The change for me was easy. It was like, all right, what do we have here that I'm going to feel a lot safer in? And this is, from the molded helmet cage combination, we moved to something like this.
Well, one of the main benefits of a combination mask, or what we're calling a combination mask, which have a cage, and typically at the higher levels they're made out of fiberglass and molded to your head. One of the main benefits is that there's less of a flat spot, but the most important thing about a good mask is that it fits. And when it's molded to your head, it doesn't move, it doesn't shift, and allows the impact to deflect off the mask and not into your head. That's the key thing about this type of product, is it allows you to play down lower and take a shot in the head without getting hurt.
Well, Eddie, I'm holding one of the mask here of one of your clients, Cristobal Huet. Why don't you go over a few elements of this model which Cristobal likes about this mask and explain to the viewers how it's put together, how it's composed, the different parts.
Yeah, one of the things over the years of making custom-made masks, we've learned that, you know, no two heads are created alike, but at the same time, we believe that the future of goalie masks means that we have to standardize fit. We have to make sized masks that we can test at CSA and find out what happens when under standardized tests, what happens. So for the NHL, we need to make a multitude of sizes for all the different head sizes in the head, and this happens to be Cristobal Huet.
You're incorporating all the knowledge you achieved through the years from the form-fitting ones where we talked about the cast of my face and implemented that knowledge into something that's maybe, I don't know if it's easier for you, but it's in the end run, it's become a better product.
Yeah, and at Eddie Mask, our goal has always been to provide a product that allows the player to stay in the game, and it's a very dangerous sport, so we know that if the player can stand up after getting hit, they will continue to play the game for many years, enjoy the game.
Well, Eddie, like I said, it's been a long time. It's been great seeing you. Thanks for giving us a tour and bringing us up to date on what's new in masks and what's old in masks. And like I said, all the goalies, thank you and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Dave.
The same thing happened with Ren Blair in Minnesota. And played a game up in Quebec City, dimly lit arena. And there's a deflection, I broke my cheekbone. So anyways, we're on our way back to Minnesota, and he stops me in Montreal. We had to change the planes there. And he told me that he wanted me to play the next night, and my face is out to here. And I says, well, you know, I really don't know if I can or not. He says, well, I want you to play, and I don't want you to be wearing a mask. He knew I had a mask because I kind of wear it periodically during practices. You know, I got a little upset with that, and I laid into him and said, hey, listen, no one's going to tell me whether I'm going to be wearing it or not. And as it turned out, I ended up back in Minnesota, went to see the doctor there, and he said, no, there's just no way that you could play tomorrow. So with that, we continued on, and Gary Bowman was our other goaltender at the time, and we ended up playing in Chicago. And this is when Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita were experimenting with their big curves. In this particular night, Hull crossed the blue line, let rip a slap shot, went high, and got Gary Bowman in the throat. Oh. And everybody thought he was a goner right there. He was starting to swallow his tongue, turning blue, the whole thing. They had doctors out there. Our trainers were out there to retrieve the tongue, and I knew darn well I'd have to go in right there. So I had the mask in the dressing room. I told our trainer to go down and get the mask. And I started wearing it that night there.
That was just a display of the skills of Ryan Getzlaf.
From the moment they dropped that puck, 20,000 screaming fans.
It's not about defending our zone. It's about defending Chicago, the capital, our garden. This is our. This is our year. No.
We may live in New York now, but our seats are definitely center ice.
We may live in LA now, but our seats are definitely center ice.
We may live in Akron now, but our seats are definitely center ice.
No matter where you live, you can get the best seats in the house with NHL Center Ice.
I do miss Queen Street.
I miss my high school girlfriend.
What?
We can still see red even up here in the Great White North.
We may live in Ocala now, but our seats are definitely center ice.
Following your favorite team has never been easier, with up to 40 out-of-market games a week, many in HD, and the action never stops. Keep track of the rest of the league and your fantasy team as the season heats up.
I'd take a deep dish pizza over some chowder any day.
No surprise there. It's NHL everywhere. NHL Center Ice. The game lives where you do. This is just wrong. Call your cable, satellite, or telco provider today, or go to NHL.com for details of how you can save with a special early bird offer.
Who would have thought Jerry Cheevers would set a trend when he decided to decorate his mast with a few strokes of black marker? Not only was a mast now a protective piece of equipment, it actually became a piece of art as well. As we wrap up the show, let's take a look back at our top 10 masks of all time. Thanks for watching 50 Years Behind the Mask.
That was just a display of the skills of Ryan Getzlaf. Top shelf for the Isaac Buccaneers. Now loose puck in front, backhand score. Camilleri.
When you learn how to play hockey, you learn more than just a sport.
You learn essential life skills.
You're keeping your grades up in school, working hard, that's good.
Teamwork and dedication.
Great save.
The NHL works with over 30 nonprofit youth hockey organizations.
You know, Dustin Bufflin, and he's going to be around to give us some good pointers maybe.
So more boys and girls of all backgrounds have the opportunity to play hockey.
What's up? Future stars?
To become part of our team, visit NHL.com. And remember,
hockey is for everyone.
Hockey is for everyone.
The Rangers welcome back Marian Gaborik as they host the Bruins. Alex Ovechkin looks to continue his hot play as the Caps entertain the Blue Jackets. Heading in opposite directions, Red Hot Sharks face the lowly Hurricanes. And after the best start in franchise history, Colorado visits Vancouver. It's NHL on the fly. Halloween is over. These are not masks. These are the real deal. Dan Pollard along with Dave Reed. A light night on Sunday with 4 games on tap, but Alexander Ovechkin on the ice. And it's always exciting when Ovi is on the ice. 5 goals over his previous 3 games. And if you stretch it out over the season, he is currently on pace for an 88-goal season, which would more than better his career high of 65 goals in 07-08. That's, of course, if he can stay healthy. Columbus facing the Washington Capitals on Comcast Sportsnet Washington.
Lateral passes important.
Quick passing play to the interior. Score! Klystrom to Backstrom. Bullseye. Another clever center. Got to Voracek, looking to Brassard. Pad save. Theodore was a good one as he stepped out on the angle. And then he covers up on that deflection try. And here's the whistle.
And we have a big scrum at the bench there of the Columbus Blue Jackets bench. Les Lund, everybody involved that was on the ice for the faceoff.
A lot of saber rattling going on in there. Plenty of high sticks. Jared Bull figures to be right in the mix. He's there with Alex Ovechkin. McCoy squirms into the offensive zone. Lang fires. That's booted away by the netminder Steve Mason, who unofficially has made 15 stops. Nash turns on the Jets. Nash, a gorgeous goal.
And here's OV, lasted 16 seconds. Here's the collision that we think he got hurt. Torres collided with OV, and OV said, I'm going to the locker room. Did not return. There could be a chance he returns in the third.
The hard around all the way for Urchina. And he will flex it back to center. Strawman waits for his team to get onside. Rick Nash plugs it in. It caroms to the front, and it's a layup for Umberger.
Well, that's the break that Columbus was looking for, and man, it doesn't get any better than that.
8 minutes deep in the third, still no sign of Alex Ovechkin, injured in the second period. Pody steps in, drives, deflected down, rebounds.
But even in your 30s, bones begin to change. Calcium and vitamin D help keep your bones strong. Yoplait has calcium and vitamin D in every cup. Keep your bones strong with Yoplait.
This is the back to school list. The cost always makes me all freaky.
Mommy!
Mom, the back to school list is here. Looks expensive. Grabbing calculator.